Welcome to Hungry for Answers with me, Robin Clare, recovery coach professional. Do you love food, alcohol, drugs, sex, social media, cigarettes, or gambling a little too much? The traditional narrative says that addiction to these vices is the problem. The truth is, they are just symptoms. This hit show takes you from recovery to your ultimate life as my special guests and I help you discover how underneath every vice is the addiction to the suffering that developed due to unhealed trauma. So what can you do? Hungry for Answers provides groundbreaking, proven solutions from my best-selling spiritual book, Feast and Famine: Healing Addiction with Grace. It's time to stop suffering and start living your ultimate life. You have a divine right to a life filled with love, joy, peace, and abundance. Hungry for Answers starts now. Hello, everybody. This is Robin Clare, and welcome to Hungry for Answers. So today's topic, from humiliation to humility, is an interesting one for me. I was in New York with my daughter at a wonderful Oneness Global event, and on the way home, I turned on NPR, and they had the woman who was the founder of the Me Too movement, and that was very interesting. She was a therapist, and she said that these young ladies would come in with these stories of abuse, and the only answer she had for them was Me Too. And so that's how she started the Me Too movement. But when I said to my guidance, wow, isn't that amazing? They said to me, hashtag who me? And I said, spelling, please. And they said, hashtag capital H, small u, capital M, small e. And I knew that this was an important hashtag. And I said, could you share with me, what do you mean by hashtag who me? And they said, there is an epidemic of humiliation on this planet. And it's possible that humiliation and the shame that we feel transforms into suffering, and then it transforms into addictive behaviors. And so I went out to the internet thinking, who could I speak to about this? And I found an article by Mark Anthony Lord, and I just was really impressed by the article. So then I went out to YouTube, and there he was. He's a wonderfully gregarious person, and I'm like, that's him. That's who's going to be on the show today. So I'd like to introduce Mark Anthony Lord. Mark is an ordained minister, a author, a spiritual counselor, and a channel. So hi, Mark. Welcome to the show.
It is such an honor to be here, really. Thank you. Thank you for causing this conversation today.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, it's really important. So I do have a question that I always ask my guests, and that is, was there a time in your life where you were so hungry for answers that you weren't even sure where to go and what to do about it, and maybe felt like you would never get the answers that you need?
Oh, absolutely. Especially around addiction, because it had become, um, well, I thought it was manageable for a while,
Mhm.
but then then it became so bad, and so all-consuming that I genuinely was afraid for my life. Every day, although I couldn't stop, I was so afraid for my life, and I did not know where to turn, and I didn't even know that a solution existed. That's how far
Mhm.
in the darkness I was.
Yeah, and it seems like you, as well as I do, I didn't realize I had a humiliation story until I read the book The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks.
Yes,
And
yes.
in order to get from your zone of brilliance, which is where we work every day, to our zone of genius, which I believe is our soul's destiny, we have to look at what are our blocks to success. And so one of the exercises I did was, um, I drew a picture of myself in the middle of a page. And I started from like age 6 all the way to now, and I started looking at all the times in my life that I felt humiliated. Now, some of them were much worse than others, and someone might say, "Oh, well, why were you humiliated?" And I'm like, "I don't know, I guess I just was." So what I'm trying to say to the audience is that humiliation doesn't necessarily seem real to anybody else. It it just feels bad to you. So I know you're very familiar with humiliation. You have your own humiliation story. So can you talk to us about that and maybe even give us your description of what humiliation is?
Yeah, absolutely. And I like what you said, because it is important that, to the world, someone may go, well, that wasn't a big deal, what just
Mhm.
happened, and they'll minimize what
Right.
occurred. But what your reference point is, like you said, but how did it feel? And did it make me crumble on the inside? That's what's relevant. And so thank you for doing that. Yeah, I was I'm a gay man, and so starting at age seriously as early as age 3, I'm also gender fluid. So inside, which means inside of me, there is a real clear just movement of male female energy. I don't identify as one more than the other because they're both so beautiful and present. So what happened
Mhm.
to me at a very early age was, the boys are playing over here and the girls are playing over there. I feel more relationally more like the girls over there, but I look physically like the boys over there. So from a very early age, I felt broken. I felt like something was really, really, really wrong with me. And so I would try as best I could to do what the boys do and act like the boys, but that natural, beautiful spirit, which is what I call it today, would just come out of me. And I'd want to go jump rope and I'd want to go play and I'd want to do what, the society says these are the things girls can do, these are the things boys can do. Well, I kept landing on that side of the
Mhm.
line. And that in our culture is something that is very quickly and aggressively humiliated. You are
Oh,
humiliated if you, and truthfully, what's humiliated is the feminine energy. The
mhm.
feminine energy is so abused, but if it shows up in a male, it's supposed to be beaten out of them. It's supposed to be, shamed out of them. So every day I was not humiliated, but every day I had the chance of being humiliated, which means that my childhood was always on hyper alert. I had to have I had to become real sensory I had to build my sensory abilities to quickly assess the environment, who's here, what could possibly happen. So I was always on alert. So even if there was a day where you could go, well, Mark, you weren't humiliated that day, the fact that you are in defense of that happening is still a traumatic thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's very real in my experience.
Yes, and I found something that you said very interesting too, which is a topic that I just have studied a long time is the divine feminine. And we're just seeing, it feels like we're just seeing the feminine being able to make a comeback
Yeah,
in this world. I know you're an ordained minister, and we saw that in the masculine oriented Bible, in even Torah, for women you were either a saint or a mother, and there wasn't a lot of room for a lot of powerful women. And in fact, I think they were removed. And I do believe that this was a way for religion to control the masses. But I do also believe that in today's world, it's becoming more acceptable to be able to be yourself.
yes,
I just saw Demi Lovato come out as asked to be referred to as they, and that was very brave of her
yeah,
to come out that way. And so, but think about all the humiliation when you just want to be yourself. and you're afraid. I keep thinking of this one story, and I don't know if I've shared it before, listeners. So I was in fifth grade, and I had kicked a home run in kickball, but as I was wearing a kilt, I was very stylish. And when I came around third base, my kilt fell off, and everyone was laughing at me. And for most of my adult life, I had this thought in my head, in my maybe even in my unconscious, that if I kicked a home run, my skirt would fall off and everyone would laugh at me. So it actually had an impact on me on how successful I could be. Was I willing to be humiliated if I became too successful? So have
Mm.
you seen that in your career, like this fear of humiliation having an impact on success in your career?
I definitely believe so. And it's always been this tension within me, because I'm a Leo, I'm very extroverted. So my natural, I mean, I'm very drawn to the stage. I worked prior to being a minister for 17 years as a dancer and choreographer. So literally, I spent my
Yeah.
life working on a stage, and I love the stage. Simultaneously, anytime I go in front of people, they're not every time, but there's a part of me, the little boy, if you will, inside of me, or the little boy girl inside of me is like, oh my God, are they going to yell at me? Are they going to say something? Will I
Mhm.
be humiliated by being
Yes.
out in front? Because that's what my experience was. And if you have humiliation trauma experiences, they add up and they become like a siren inside of you that's going to really protect you, is really what
Yes.
it wants to do. But we
Yes.
know that that protection that is that it's doing is also blocking us from being more courageous and going for success and
Yes.
for being
So,
who we're here to be.
so thank you, Mark. We're going to take our first commercial break. You're listening to Hungry for Answers with Robin Clare and my guest, Mark Anthony Lord, and we'll be right back. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Hungry for Answers with me, Robin Clare. To learn more about my work, please go to clarity.com. That's CLARE-ITY.com. And Mark, before we go any further, can you share with our audience how they can reach you?
Yes, absolutely. My website is www.markanthonylord.me. And I'm also, you can find me on Instagram at Mark Anthony Lord.
Wonderful. Thank you. So, we are going to talk about three words that come from the same root but have three totally different meanings and impact on our life. So, Mark, we're going to talk about humiliation, humble, and humility.
Mhm.
And today's segment was from humiliation to humility. And interesting for me, I was told, and I believe this is part to do with why I struggled with bulimia for so long and obsessive food compulsive disorder, is that I was told a lot um, by my father, actually, to not be too full of myself.
Mm.
And so it's hard for me to be to have I think I have too much humility. Like I think that I don't know how to value myself. I'm better now. I wouldn't be doing this show if I hadn't got to where I am through a lot of examination of my life and a lot of belief in my own gifts and acceptance of my purpose. But there is a quite a difference between being um, bragging. I think they're like the same coin, but two different sides. Being overly bragging and over egoic, and being too having too much humility. So we'll
Mm.
get back to that, but I'd love for you to define for us, if you can, what is humiliation in your perspective, and what does the word humble mean, and what does humility mean? So
Yeah,
take it away.
awesome, awesome. I just looked up the word humility, and it says a modest or low view of one's own importance,
Mhm.
humbleness. Now, even that definition to me feels a bit diminishing
Yes.
of the self, the self with the capital S, which is inside of us. But there's a positive idea around humbleness or humility, which is exactly what you were referencing. If the ego self, the part of me that can get puffed up and prideful for my accomplishments, can be prideful for my degrees and my things that I've done in the world, that is when we have an exaggerated, puffed up belief or experience of ourselves. And like you said, for some people, and especially because religious overtones can make people really become very, very small. Lord, I am unworthy to
Yeah.
receive you. Said that as a child in the Catholic Church. So, like you said, the extreme of it can be minimizing of our divinity.
Yes.
And so it really is, to be humble to me is in balance of power. It's like, I'll say it this way: we have access to all power because we are, and we have the amount of access to it as we let ourselves remember that we're powerless. So there's a paradox. The more
Yes.
powerless I am, the more power I have access to. And this is the same thing around humility. The more humble I am in remembering that I'm not the one making the sun rise. I'm not the one, turning the earth on its axis. I'm not the one who is causing life to happen. When I've got that humility, that humbleness, it causes an opening within me, which moves me to gratitude, which moves me to appreciation, which
Mm.
moves me to be a part of something beautiful. And in that humbleness, I am offered a greater sense of access to my true power, to my true higher self. So humbleness, humility, really, when we're anchored and centered in it, can really cause an experience of greatness. But it's not egoic greatness. It's
Yeah.
something that feels like, oh my God, this is amazing kind of greatness.
Yeah. So in Feast and Famine, the four parts. So Sophia, the Holy Spirit, shared four parts. Pain is inevitable, suffering is an option, surrender is required, and grace must be allowed. And
Mm,
I think you're really talking about surrender here. Like
yeah.
when you surrender whatever, if you have a problem with addiction and you want to be in recovery, or you have a problem with anything in this world, friends, if you surrender it and you throw your hands up, I love in the 12 steps, let go, let God. If you do that, then the answers that come to you are extraordinary and the help that comes to you. And I just wish I could stand on the rooftop and shout that to everybody, but I guess that's why I'm doing a podcast, right? That we don't know that until we know that. Would you agree? We don't
Yeah.
know that there is unlimited help for us in the
Yeah.
form of grace.
Well, and when that grace and that unlimited help has saved your life, like it has mine, I
Mhm.
mentioned earlier how dark it was to be where I am today, alive, number one, and
Yes.
number two, to actually be a minister and to be helping people. Like, I am humble. I am forever humble to that higher power that clearly did for me what I could not do for myself. So it's those
Yeah.
kind of things where we are positively overwhelmed by something about life that is taking care of us. And grace is a beautiful word.
Yes. And it is a beautiful word. And I'm being drawn to share another story about my recovery. So I spent 40 years in obsessive compulsive food disorder and bulimia. I started with when I was 17. And one of the things I discovered in my recovery through working with through therapy and with my spiritual team is that I used bulimia as a way to self humiliate myself.
Mm.
So when I would be complete with the action of bulimia, I would look in the mirror and I would roll my eyes at myself. And I didn't know that that's what I was doing. until I knew that's what I was doing, till it was revealed to me that I was humiliating myself, and that way no one else could humiliate me. And once I realized that I didn't have to humiliate myself, then I started walking towards recovery. Because I would have beautiful friends in recovery and I would be like, "Why what is it that they know that I don't know? Why am I still in this?" It's like 30, 20 years, 30 years, 35 years,
Mm,
40 years. And it wasn't until I realized that I was self-humiliating myself that
yeah.
I realized I don't want to do that anymore. I want to take this this understanding that I have and teach others. And I also knew that if I did, I was warned that I would die from this.
Ah,
Yeah,
yeah.
from something in my body would cease to work if I continued to do this. But what do you think about this idea of self-humiliation?
Well, I think what it is a byproduct of an unhealed humiliation experience, typically for us in a very early age in our childhood. When we get wounded in some way, our perception of ourself becomes wounded. We suffer a humiliation that really becomes a strong belief of who we are. I believe we're always drawn to ourselves, the repeat of the pattern, not to be punished by it, but because it wants to be healed. And so, as crazy as it sounds, a person will keep drawing to themselves an abusive relationship until they themselves have a transformation around how they know themselves, and that part of them becomes healed. And then they don't need to play that out anymore. They get to have a new experience of life. So to me, what you're describing is that's how I think about it. I'm like, oh, this is a call for me to look deeper within, like you said, and go, oh,
Yes.
what needs to be healed in me so that I don't need to keep repeating it.
Yes, and don't you find the longer you're on the path of living, of looking at your stuff, right? Of whatever you do, folks, whether it's therapy, life coach, talk to your minister, your rabbi, whatever it is, the longer you do it, the more you're able to recognize those moments that you were just talking about. Like I had something happen to me with my husband, and I knew in every core part of my body, every gut feeling I had, that what was going on between us had nothing, what was really happening had nothing to do with that. And I just knew immediately that I had to spend time with it to figure out what am I really upset about. And when I realized what I was really upset about, I was so grateful that I knew to take the time that I needed in order to be able to come to truly what was needed to be healed. But
Yeah.
I guess my point is I just love it now. It's like something will happen, it'll be like, "Ooh," and I'm like that, "Ooh." I like to unveil things and look at things in my life. How about you? Are you living an examined life?
Well, yeah, and that is the gift, prior to the ability to examine your life. What happens is we get humiliated, we go into the shame spiral, we believe it's
Mhm.
true, and we just stay stuck in suffering. So, what you're talking about, I think, I call it a quantum leap in consciousness, where something happens where we now we're able to be the observer. We're able to watch ourselves and
Mhm.
to begin to positively manage our responses so we can do exactly what you said, which is let me discover what's really here. Because if I can get to the truth, then I can have a real conversation.
Yes.
Otherwise, we're just kind of circling the airport, just kind of beating each other up a little bit. So
Yeah, and
what you described is such high holy work, I think.
thank you. And when I finally sent an email to my husband telling him what was going on, And, uh, and a friend of mine, Colleen Morgan, always talks about light, love, integrity, gratitude, humility, and truth. And
Mm,
I wrote that note to him in light, and And he wrote back and said, "This is the most mature email I have ever read." So I'm like, well, I'm glad because I took the time to really write it in the I thou conversation because that's the type of relationship I want to have. But doing the healing work, I think, helps that. So we are going to another commercial. You're listening to Hungry for Answers with Robin Clare and my guest, Mark Anthony Lord, and we'll be right back. Hello, and welcome back to Hungry for Answers. We're going to do our first giveaway, and this is a copy of my book, Feast and Famine Healing Addiction with Grace. And you can call 1-800-930-2819. And so, welcome back, Mark Anthony Lord, to my show, Hungry for Answers. And I had a question from the last segment I just want to ask because it's something that you said to me when we first met and it you described humility as a way to honor your connection to the divine, and you use the words "I am in awe" as like almost like as a mantra. I am in awe.
Yeah.
And so, can you talk about awe, AWE, not AWWW, that not that awe, AWE as a way to in context to this word humility and how if people maybe saw it that way, they might be not afraid of humility.
Yeah, yeah, it really is the most fulfilling experience of it. And I think everyone listening can, you can think about any time when, maybe you were watching a sunset, or maybe you just looked out onto nature. Nature is a great place where many people experience that, it's kind of a oneness with everything, but it's also an awe for the greater life. When you're looking at a baby. There's so many opportunities throughout the day to have a moment where time stands still.
Right.
There's no past, there's no future, because what is here has captured you. And when you're captured fully by something beautiful, my apologies for him, when you're
That's okay.
captured by something beautiful, you naturally move into this openness and awe.
Yeah, don't worry about puppies. Mine's at daycare, so otherwise she'd be doing the same thing. Um, do you think that humiliation and shame go hand in hand?
I absolutely do, because if we are struggling with shame, humiliation is a great way to get us there quickly. Like there's just really no better doorway to, and there's lots of
Mhm.
doors to go through that if we want, in our uh, attraction and addiction to shame. I'll use that word. Yeah, that feels right. But the doorway of humiliation is a fast track way for me to get there. So I really pay attention to that because although I experienced great recovery in my life, I really still have I call it a pocket of shame or a little bit of it that I've got to pay attention to, but I know how to love myself when it does get triggered. And what I've also come to practice, by the way, because we want to help people also with uh,
Yeah,
being free, is like when I experience humiliation, I can pause and I can say, I'm an adult man today and I can handle myself today, and nothing's going to harm me today. Like I really get myself anchored in what's actually true. And
yeah,
really, most things are like my challenge is I can turn a mild embarrassment into humiliation. So part of my recovery work is to right size the experience and say, it's okay to feel embarrassed. Like that's fine, but
yeah,
I can live with embarrassment.
yeah. So
you know?
in writing Feast and Famine, in doing the research, I one of the things that helped me dramatically with with the humiliation struggle is realizing that no one can judge me unless I give them the title of judge. I
Yes.
didn't know that.
Right.
I thought every being on this planet had a right to judge me, and I had to take it from everybody, and um, and I had to feel humiliated and ashamed, until I realized that if I if I don't invite them to be judge, then I have 2 choices. I can say, "Okay, thank you so much. I'll think about your perspective," or I can say, "Go to hell." I can do
Yeah,
whatever I want.
whatever you want.
But this idea that they're not judging me because I'm not allowing them to, I'm not giving them that title was very profound, and I hope our listeners, take that with them. But one of the things you said earlier is you kinda did a chicken and an egg, um, moment for me. When I asked the question, "Do humiliation and shame go hand in hand?" I always assumed that shame followed humiliation, but you said that you could have a shame, um disorder or a shame way of looking. You feel shameful, and then humiliation is like a great trigger for the shame. I never thought of it that way. That's why I'm
Wow.
saying it's like a chicken and an egg scenario, because I never thought of the idea that if you struggle with shame, that when humiliation happens, it just triggers the shame in you.
Yeah, yeah. For me, it's like the floor just drops out,
Yeah.
and down I go. And you know, it another thing that I know you probably teach about and is important for us in recovery is to remember, and this is positive humility. I'm self-obsessed at times, and I will do something 3 days ago and not be able to stop thinking about it. But I need to remind myself that I'm not that important in other people's lives. In the most positive sense, they're not thinking about me as much as I think they're thinking about me. So I create this crazy loop
Yes.
inside of me, and everyone's off living their lives. So that's an
I
example of positive humility.
I like that because I think that every single person struggles with that.
Yeah,
And I'm gonna say that very I'm gonna take a stand on that because I think we do that and we realize that they're not thinking about us. My mom used to say that they'll talk about you for a minute or 2 and then they'll move on to the next person.
yeah,
And especially if they're people who talk about other people, that will happen.
yeah.
And my dad used to say, "Do you think they actually really care that much, Robin?" And I'm like, "I don't know, Dad. It feels that way." Right?
It
So,
does feel that way. It feels big. It
yeah,
does.
yeah. So another question for you, Mark, is what do you think is the importance of forgiveness in healing from the impact of humiliation and shame?
Well, I'm a forgiveness junkie. I teach forgiveness. I've been teaching it for almost 20 years now. I've been transformed by it. I think it is the spiritual practice that has most um, brought me peace and joy and a life that I'm living. But what I mean by forgiveness is such a deep idea. So I want to get to it quickly. Number
Yeah.
one, the ultimate forgiveness is inside of me, forgiving the part of me that believes I can be humiliated, forgiving the part of me that gave power to someone else so that they had that you know, baseball bat in their hand or whatever. So it is a two-way street. I forgive them, I forgive me, but I don't do the forgiveness. I ask that it be done unto me because it's a mystical experience. Forgiveness is done unto us by our higher power. And what forgiveness means is not that it just makes what happened acceptable or okay. The deepest experience of forgiveness, and I've got to go all the way there, is what happened, if it's not of God, isn't ultimately even true. And everything that is not of love will dissolve and be forgiven and disappear. So humiliation itself is not an experience of God for me. So all that is created from it and around it, forgiveness is the practice for me that causes it to dissolve and ultimately disappear.
Hmm. So let's just break that down a moment because you said forgiveness is done unto you. So
Yes.
how do you do that? Is this a prayer practice? What
It
what
is. It is a perfect because so many people, I've got to forgive. I've got to forgive. And I'm like, no, you don't know. You can't forgive. You don't know how because the part of you that believes that you've been hurt and harmed is the part you can't solve the problem at the level of the problem. We need to call upon our higher power. And for me, that is asking. I ask that forgiveness set me and this person free. I
Right.
ask that forgiveness set me free. That is an invitation. It is said in all scripture. Ask. Ask is activation. So when I ask, the universe is going, oh, he would like this activated in his favor. Got it. Let's do it.
Yeah, love it.
And yeah, and so it begins to work inside of me. Now, what can block forgiveness from happening, and this is important, is if I keep repeating the story. If I want to keep staying stuck in the story, I'm
Yeah.
impeding the success of forgiveness. It's going to slow forgiveness down. So I ask for forgiveness and then I fast from the story. And when the story haunts me, I go back to asking for forgiveness. So it's a simple equation.
So when it comes back up in your memory, or
Yeah.
even more when it starts bothering you again,
Yep.
right? Because it can come up and you could be like, oh, you know what? I asked for forgiveness. I'm going to do something else. But when it's there and it's stuck there, then you ask for forgiveness again, is what you're sharing.
Forgiveness is not a one-time deal. It's
Yeah.
something that I do until it is done unto me. And the great analogy is I could also say, well, I went to the gym last month. I don't know why my body isn't changing. I mean, that would be ridiculous to us. Of course, you'd be like, you probably need to go to the gym a little more than one
Yeah.
time a month if you
Yeah.
want a result. That's a good analogy for forgiveness. It's
And
not a one-time deal.
and I also want to share too when you said stop telling that story. That happens a lot with me in my life coaching. Not in my writing coaching, because in my writing coaching, I want them to tell that story.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
in my life coaching, I'll be like, if you want a different outcome, you have to tell a different story. And so whether you even I mostly suggest that they stop telling that story. But if you have to tell that story, let's find a different way to say it.
yeah.
Let's see what you learned from it. Let's have some empathy for the person you're talking about. Let's share forgiveness in the story with that to that person. So I say that a lot with clients, like, stop telling that story
I,
because vibrationally, you become that story,
Right, right.
right?
But I appreciate, and this is important, this is good coaching on your part. There are times when telling the story is helpful and in service to becoming free from the
Yes.
story. But that's when they're working with someone like you or a therapist, or they're telling the story for that purpose. Then you want to like get the whole story out, like
Mhm.
really go for it. But what we're talking about is when you're repeating the story to keep harming yourself or to keep being right or to gossip, or it's the lower vibration
Yeah,
storytelling.
I love that, to make yourself feel better because of your part in the story. So
Right.
right? I've done that many times. So, we're gonna go to break again. This is Robin Clare, Hungry for Answers, and I'm here with Mark Anthony Lord, and we'll be back soon. Hello, and welcome back to Hungry for Answers with me, Robin Clare. You can reach me at clarity.com, CLARE-ITY.com, or on Instagram, Clarity by Robin, and Facebook, Clarity with Robin. And Mark, why don't you share with everybody how they can reach you?
Yeah, thank you. My website is www.markanthonylord.me, not .com.me. And then on Instagram, you can follow me at Mark Anthony Lord.
That's great. So we also have another giveaway, and this giveaway is from Mark, and it's a giveaway of his book called Thou Shall Not Suffer, 7 Steps to Living Joy, correct?
To a
Almost
life
correct.
of joy.
To a life
Seven
of joy.
to a life
Yes,
of joy. Yes.
to a
Yes.
life of joy. So call 1-800-930-2819 if you would like to receive Mark's book. So we're in our last segment, and I I feel like we did a good job covering humiliation, humility, being humble, Is there anything else that you'd like to share with before we move on to the last segment so people can learn more about your work?
Um, around humiliation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think it's such an important conversation, and I really hope that our talk today is helping people kind of discern it, because what happens is humiliation and humbleness or humility get collapsed. And when
Mm.
they're collapsed, we don't know one from the other. So, hopefully this being together today is helping people begin to separate the two so that they can actually have a different experience and create a change.
Yeah, and in your article that you wrote, one of the things that you said that I thought was so important is that people in addiction who want to be in recovery can't be afraid of humiliation in the form of the fear of someone finding out about their addiction. We just don't have that luxury when
Yes.
you're in addiction. You've got to be for yourself and for whomever you love. And you can't be afraid of humiliation. Um, and it's understandable to be afraid because it was probably if according to spirit hashtag who me, that there's an epidemic of humiliation that comes from being criticized, from being bullied, from being made to feel that who you are is not good enough. So we can't afford to take that fear of humiliation into the recovery process. So you
Yeah.
want to talk a little bit more about that, because I found that very profound.
Well, I think number one, our culture today is so much more accepting around people being in recovery and being, we're everywhere. So it is easier today to be able to just own that this is my journey and to be humble about my journey, but also to be kind of proud of my journey, grateful. These things cause me to share honestly about who I am and where I am. And every time I do, I'm met with appreciation, with respect, with questions that are helpful to someone else. It's sort of like us doing the 12th step out there in the world, just walking in who we are. And I want to tell a quick story. My uncle back in the 70s was got into recovery, but everyone else was still alcoholic. He had to move, according to him, he moved to Phoenix to get away from the family because the family kept picking on him and humiliating him because he quit drinking and
Wow.
because he was weak. So
Mhm.
that's an example of the craziness of it.
Right.
But he put himself first. He saved his life. I so respect him for that.
Yes, yes. And, and maybe on some level, he was an example for them.
Yeah,
Maybe they put him up eventually up on maybe where they, could say, "Well, if he did it, I can do it too." Because
right.
that's what helped me to come into recovery was all of the people that I loved, were in recovery that had a problem, and I'm like, "I can do this too." And I just would look at them and know that it was possible. So you wrote, I love the title of your book, Thou Shalt Not Suffer. And you want to talk a little bit about this book?
Yeah, I'd love to. It is Thou Shalt Not Suffer, Seven Steps to a Life of Joy. When I was working with my publisher, I wanted to call it Thou Shalt Not Suffer, the New Commandment. And he was
Yeah.
like, oh, who are you to write the new commandment? And I wish I would have pushed back because I think that's such a fun name. But Seven Steps to a Life of Joy. So there are 7 steps in there that are really dedicated to helping you end the suffering game. I love what you said. Pain is here, suffering is optional.
Right.
So these 7 steps really help you with exercises in the book, help you to, with step number 1, reassess who is God. Do you have a God that is loving, or are you stuck in concepts from your childhood or your conditioning that is making you feel afraid of God? So the very first step is let's get that cleaned up. Let's get that flowing so that your higher power, source energy, whatever you call it, you have a loving relationship with it. And then it moves forward, moving into forgiveness, how to love yourself, how to accept and want what you want. And there's more steps along the path, but it's an easy read and it's in workbook style. So not only do you read about it, but you get opportunity to practice it.
That's great. And do you speak about this book? Are you available to share with other groups?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'd love to do that. I haven't done it in a while because of some other work I've been doing, but I would like to bring it forward again because I get good response from the book when I teach on it.
Yeah, and what I love about the book, let me see if I can word this. I think in religion, we don't think we're allowed to suffer, even though we're suffering all the time. We think that that's reserved for saints and maybe Jesus, right? Like only those beings are allowed to suffer. And so I love that you're bringing the energy the of diminishing suffering, but sort of in a the title makes it comfortable for people who are stuck in the religious paradigm that we're really not supposed to suffer. That's we save that for the saints. So
Mm.
thank you for doing that. I think that that's great. So what else are you up to, Mark? What else is happening for you?
Well, I have a program called Living the Course. I'm also a Course in Miracles teacher and
Mm,
student. And I work with a really dear friend of mine. His name is Aaron Abke. And he and I have that program. So if you go to my website, you can learn about that and learn more about what's happening there. We do teachings, Thursday night teachings on the principles inside the course. And then I also created something called, I'm torn between what it is yet. I think you can appreciate this. It's a prayer process. Heavenly prayer, alchemical prayer. I don't know what it is specifically called yet, but it takes the chakras, uses the chakras to create alignment with the kingdom of heaven inside of you, which
beautiful.
is where the kingdom of heaven is. Once that's established, then you move into prayer. So it's a prayer practice that helps you get into alignment, get into experience of your oneness with the divine. And when you're in that place, truly ask and it is given. So it
That's
teaches you how to do that.
Yeah, and I know from my work, from my current book, King Solomon Speaks, that when we do that alignment of our chakras with even the earth chakras, oops, sorry about that, um, and the earth chakras, that we um, create can have the potential to create a tipping point on the planet which moves us from which moves all of humanity into higher consciousness.
Yes.
So I'm glad that you're doing it that way, and I'm going to send out blessings for that. So I want to say thank you, Mark, for being here. And if you're suffering from if you're suffering with addiction, please know that healing, recovery, and living your ultimate life is possible for you. Know that you're never alone, and that if you need, you should seek traditional help and also connect with your inner wisdom and spiritual guidance. And so, as a writing coach, I offer a free 30-minute conversation with me to see if you can take your healing and recovery story and make it into a best-selling book. So, thank you, everyone, for being here. And I hope to see you next time on Hungry for Answers. Take care. Bye bye. Thank you for tuning into Hungry for Answers. Learning to love ourselves is the one true solution to addiction. Make a commitment to healing today and see how you can reach your ultimate potential. Remember, you have a divine right to a life filled with love, joy, peace, and abundance. To learn more about me and my offerings, please go to clarity.com. That's Clare, CLARE -ity.com. See you next time.